Hello, 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 hello. Welcome to Leap Taken. I'm Mika. Here at Leap Taken, I talk all things witchy, craft related, law of attraction, manifesting esoteric, and everything else in between. And I don't see anybody here yet. I'm trying to silence all my devices because I got a habit of getting interrupted. Anyway, but hello, welcome to the channel. This is all about the movie Sinners, and I have notes for days on this. I went to the movie. I have 3 pages of notes, literally. I went to the movie over the weekend to go see the movie, and I debated on whether or not I was going to watch it one more time, and I will. I just didn't have an opportunity. I had stuff going on. I didn't have an opportunity to watch it now, or between the weekend and now, because life be life, and I had I'm doing some things over here, so I couldn't get to it, but I do want to talk about it, and I am in a different location. Speaking of life, and I have a lot of different things happening in my home space. So I am temporarily kicking myself out of my normal witchy craft room, and that's going to be used momentarily for well, I'm going to say guests because I think they'll just be here for a handful of months, and then I'll be back. So you might see me at different places. So I decided to, you can come into the boudoir with me. I'm getting real intimate here, letting you in my space. I don't mind. I've already shown this from on my other channel, Magical Lifestyle of a Cottage Witch, because I talked about like being inspired by Aphrodite and Oshun and just very, powerful feminine energy and using the color pink and sort of exploring that. And yeah, this you're starting to see some of that. Anyway, welcome if you didn't know. So I'm not I don't just talk about it, I'm about it. So I want to talk about this movie. So if you don't know, there's a movie out right now. Opening weekend was this weekend called Sinners by Ryan Coogler. It is a movie that it's basically about vampires. The setting is in Mississippi in 1932. Okay, and that's sort of just the broad explanation. So we have our two brothers, Smokestack. um, we have our two brothers played by the same person, which is freaky because as I watched this movie, I legit, in my mind, I was looking at two people. Like I just accepted it. And the person I was with at the movie theater also said the same thing. They were like, I don't know. I'm locked in. Like at this point, I think he's two people. Like he played it so well. I really thought that. So yeah, I'm just looking down at my notes because I can run. I could run. The tangent will be, yeah. But anyway, so yeah, Michael B. Jordan, by the way, plays the character Smoke and Stack. So the movie opens up, and yes, this is all spoilers. So I don't know how to talk about this because we're going to talk about symbolism. I'm going to be describing things, and we're going to get into it. Um, Smoke and Stack arrive from Chicago back into it's Clarksdale, Mississippi. They come back in, and they're going to open up a juke joint. And the movie basically is just this entire day of from them getting, everything, paying for a place, getting it set up, getting people out there, getting the talent, getting the food, getting the vibes going for the spot, and then, inviting people. And then the movie is done by the next morning. So that's basically it. Um, oh, so let's talk about 1932 before I say anything else. Of course, I didn't know this going into it because I didn't do any research first, but I'm going to help you out to kind of paint a picture. 1932, Great Depression is at its peak. To put it in perspective, that's what's happening in 1932. You need to remember that Roosevelt just became president. Chicago had been very deeply affected by the Great Depression, hence all the organized crime going on. Because whenever the economy is tough, trust me, it's about to be a boom in something else. Because people, these conservative people, want to block it. Like it was alcohol, they want you to do anything. So people going to party, they're going to still drink. The government is just, they're not going to get a cut. And it's just the streets now getting the money or the mafia. So What we do know is Smoke and Stack has a lot of money coming into town. They have a young cousin named Sammy. Sammy, we understand that Sammy's father is a reverend of a church, and he would like his son to take after him. And this is where we start getting into the symbolism and the metaphors and all that sort of stuff. And I waited to do this video till today because I usually come on today. It took everything in me not to do this immediately. Since then, I have come across breakdown and reviews of this movie, and it is just really odd how, not odd, that's not the right word. I'm always taken aback that people can have such varying um, takeaways from a movie. Um, it always throws me off a little bit. There are some people who truly believe that the the decision should have been that Sammy should, he should just stay more faithful in the word and in God and in the church and all that. Basically, be a good little Christian. And if he had listened to his father and avoided that, he wouldn't have, been a part of, or things wouldn't have happened if he would have listened to his father. And they kind of took that as a sign, like, so it's right. The dad was right and Sammy was wrong. Um, because the dad wasn't about him, being at the juke joint, hanging around with the cousins, and playing the guitar. He didn't like that he was, spending his time doing that. He should be in the house of the Lord, and he should, be practicing doing sermons and all that sort of stuff. Um, so anyway, and Sammy felt differently. And the one thing that I noticed from the beginning is Sammy always he loved his father, he respected that man, but he felt differently. He felt differently from the beginning. And if you're paying attention, he always felt the way he felt about his music and his gifts and what he could bring. It was never about limiting himself to just the church. To me, he was always trying to come out of that. He was always trying to move forward, and follow his gift. I never got that he was going to ever just be okay with the church and just staying in that town and keeping yourself small and obedient and picking cotton and just he wanted more. All right, so that's kind of I'm not gonna well, we could talk about the whole movie, but I'm not gonna tell scene by scene by scene as much as I want to. All right, so the major themes that I kind of want to talk about. Oh, and let me go back to Clarksdale. Just a little bit of Clarksdale is calls itself the birthplace of blues. It's also the site of, if you didn't know, Crossroads, where is around, I think it's 1930. Robert Johnson supposedly sold his soul to the devil in exchange for being a supreme guitarist, his artistry in being a guitar player. That's so anyway. Keep that in mind. So there's context to this. There's stuff. Think about that if you didn't know. Now I want to talk about the brotherhood, the twins, Smoke and Stack. And this is we'll just I'm going to talk about family separate. Let's just talk about their dynamic. They're okay. So I know a little something about twins. I'm not a twin, but I had been married to a twin, and an identical twin. And it's very interesting to see how these people like they operate. I just spoiler, they really don't operate quite the same way as siblings do. It's a totally different thing with them. It doesn't matter how close they are or how not close they are. There is definitely something else different about them. And there's a deeper connection. If you believe in a concept of soulmates and things like that, I can't see how you can't think a twin is like that is your literal twin flame. Because take the romantic, part out of it, and you just think about souls connecting. I always think that's what twins are, regardless of their relationship. Yeah, there's something deeper going on there. So when I say that, I mean like the connection you have to a sibling with a twin, it's heightened. It's different. So we're seeing that dynamic play out. We see where when Stack, I told you they're spoilers, when Stack eventually turns into a vampire, and we get to the point of he's, attacking Smoke, and they're going back and forth in the movie. There's a part where it looks like Smoke is going to be done for, and one, he couldn't bite him because our old girl Annie with the mojo bag, but we're getting to that. But also that allowed for the connection to take over as brothers, as twin brothers, and they were able to have a conversation and come to a deal and make a deal so that Stack wouldn't go after Sammy. Remember, that was her cousin. He wouldn't go after him. He would let him live his full life. Um, because of that connection, and for me, I think because of their deep connection is why Stack didn't just go full on cult to the point where, he ended up dying with the rest of the vampires that night. Him and the Mary. I had to look down because I'm bad. Him and Mary, the woman that looked white, who had a little bit of black in her, with 1/8 black. Was that a quadroon? Quadroon? I don't know. I gotta brush up on my old timey racist terms. I forget. Anyway, I did, to me, that's where that twin um energy comes into play, because to me it lets me know it was bigger than the lore and the pool of all the other vampires. He was able to actually make sense, get talk to Stack. He was able to reason with him, so he wasn't beyond reason, right? And I find that very interesting. So I just thought that was an interesting theme to play out. We could definitely explore more into twins and all that sort of stuff, but there is definitely something there. Um, and then family. So regardless of all the stuff that Smoke and Stack had been through, they had been, they fought in a war, the First World War, being in Boston and Chicago, and things is just, I mean, it's, as he would tell his cousin Sammy, his little cousin Sammy, he was like, look, Chicago ain't nothing but a plantation with tall buildings. It's like the racism. Hey, Jim Stones, the racism is still racing. It's still, these people still hate us, whether we up north, Midwest, or in a deep South. They hate us regardless. As somebody who grew up north and spent a lot of their adult years in the South, I will tell you, there is an illusion in the North, and there's a lot of people. My family, we're all from up north. There's this illusion, um, and some of them believe it, that things are not as bad as other people say they are. So, you'll have other Black people saying, no, we still not free, or this is still not, it's still just as bad. Don't, and we think because the we live in up north, for instance, we live, most Black people, will live in our areas in a city or something like that. And I don't want to say the white people are nicer to us, because that's not true. It's just that it's not as overt per se. Sometimes it's not as overt, but it's still happening. Me personally, I was pulled over a crazy amount. I was pulled over so much. Like, my mother was like, "You need to maybe start pressing charges." But it wasn't just one police station. It was whenever I would take this ride, I would take different roads sometimes just to not get pulled over. And it wasn't because I was a bad driver. They were just telling me I look. One time I was pulled over because they said I look suspicious. Um, my good friend at the time also said, she was driving a minivan. We were young moms, and we just got pulled over all the time. I was getting pulled over sometimes 2 or 3 times in one week. And it's these little, they have townships in New Jersey where they want to make their money, but they kept getting me. Now, this was a problem for me. It wasn't like, oh, you're just getting pulled over. Oh, well, they were giving me tickets after tickets on just dumb stuff. I remember leaving I'm at a store, and I'm going onto the street, and he said, "Oh, well, where you pulled out from, you're not supposed to turn there." I was like, "I never saw a sign." And he says, "Where I came out from wasn't someplace I could turn off onto the street, but I didn't drive over a curb. He said, "Well, you can't make a left turn there." I said, "There was literally no sign that says I can't go left. I'm used to shopping at that store. I got a ticket for that." So that's the kind of thing. And it definitely turned into harassment. I can't help but think because I was black and I got jammed up with these tickets because I couldn't afford to pay, and I was getting stopped over so much, pulled over so much. It turned into a thing. I didn't show up to my court date. I was like in my 20s. They pulled me over. I remember. I don't remember which time. It was so many, and I remember I just started crying. And the guy was like, "Oh, your tail light is out." I didn't know what it was for, but I'm just saying I'm going into this story because I just want y'all to know, like, there is. By the way, I lived in the South, and I think I got pulled over once. And then the person was so nice to me. Since I lived here, it was just so, and that it wasn't a ticket or anything. They were just letting me know something about the car. And then living here in Arizona, I've been here for 4 years. One time, this guy, I got pulled over just around the corner from my house, and he was like, "Hey, I saw you make a right. You didn't do anything wrong, but we're just letting people know to be careful because we've had a lot of incidents with people getting ran over." Cool guy, like he was really cool. He didn't, harass me. He was just like, he was like coming over me like, "Hey, I don't, it's not a problem." But I just want you to know, like, when you stop, don't stop within the crosswalk because we're having a lot of like fatalities. People are getting hit a lot at this intersection. Thank you. That's what you're supposed to do as a police. That's what you want, right? Um, but I've experienced more aggression up north. Just just saying. Anyway, back to the thing. Tangent over. Which ties into the concept of freedom. So having brief moments of freedom. This is a theme that's explored here, and you hear them talk about it because that night at the juke joint, because they finally get it up and running. That night, there is you could they everybody kind of talks about they felt good, they felt free. The whole point of the juke joint was to have a place for us by us. Um, Even in 2025, that's an issue. Um, Spaces for just black faces is a problem. It's not a problem for us. It's a problem for others. There's a lot of well, why can't it? And I feel like people are just trying to pretend to be stupid, or maybe they really are. I don't know. When you ask the question, well, why is it okay for all black space but not all white? Well, we already have all white spaces. It's been all white space. What are you talking about? They exist. They've been existing. There's more of them than this one little black spot. So chill. Like, we have to call it that because otherwise y'all will come over and infiltrate, and then it doesn't become a safe place for any of us. So that's why we have to call it that. It's not us. It's you. Anyway, but no, they all talked about that being one of the best nights of their night until the sun came up. Sorry for the outside noise. I got windows open. I'm trying to take advantage of before it's burning hot weather. And I wanted to air out. I had some allergy stuff going on. I was like, we got to air out the house. All the windows are open to create like a cross breeze and just air out. Um, Ancestral ties. So there's a scene that takes place through music. So Sammy's playing, it's full on at the juke joint. Everybody's dancing. Sammy's music, and they talk about it. There's a narration that takes place that talks about how when you there's some people who have a gift with music that energy transcends time. It's past, present, and future. And there's a scene that shows that. So you see past, and you see the Chinese ancestors dancing, and you see, of course, African. And then, the African American influence as it's going through the present and in the future. There's so much of that, and you see the physical, and it just seamlessly blends the music, and it's just it. And anybody I know who have seen that I've personally talked to, that scene did something. Like it. First of all, listening to the music pulled on something deep within me. Um, listening to the I'm going into the music, but yeah, that scene alone pulled something. I became very emotional in the theater with that scene. I don't know many people who didn't, because it's telling a truth, and we're seeing it on the big screen, on how music transcends. Now, us witchy folk already know that, right? We know vibrations, we understand frequency, we understand how sounds and all that sort of stuff turns into something more. We know that, right? We know that. Um, so that's not new information to us, but it's interesting to see that play out. And it had so many other meanings involved with that, such deep, reflective. I mean, it's something really to think about on the music that you like. Why do you like it? We're like, ancestrally speaking, on a deeper soul level, why do you think you love those sounds? And it doesn't matter. It's not about it, because it's all amalgamation, yeah, of other sounds and music. Like, why does that? Why are you drawn to that? And you can kind of help. It's to when the kids always say it's not that deep. It is that deep, and they explore that. Now we're going to talk about the music of when Remick, who I'm just not getting to the vampire. So the vampire Remick, or Remy, comes on the scene. He goes to the club, the juke joint. They're all having a good time. He comes over with uh, at the time, just the two people he killed and converted to be vampires. um, they come up, they can't come in. So the old school vampire trope of you have to be invited in is still prevalent in this movie. So they come in. I mean, they're at the door, and they're not letting them in. First of all, they're white. So we're already in danger, because when, you guys, unfortunately, when the white folk come, it's a problem, because no matter what happens, it's always bad. They get angry, and they call the Klan and the police. It's just, everybody's dying, and we don't want that. So it's just best not for them to come in at all, except for the 1/8 white lady, 1/8 black white lady that's there, who they do point out, well, why she get to come in and we can't? But one of the things they do is start singing a song. One of the songs they're singing is something about picking the bones clean. And that song is a double entendre, because that's intentional, because they're going to eat people. But also there's something more about that. And that's something, I think, how do you want to take it? If you listen to it. Now, the soundtrack for The Sinners, I haven't listened to it yet. That's something I'm going to do probably today, and listen to the soundtrack, so I can kind of vibe from the musical standpoint, not just from the movie. Um, when they got to him singing the Irish song, and I don't remember the name of the song. Forgive me, I didn't write that down. Doing the Irish jig out there. A lot of us joke. I fear that would have worked on me, and I would, because it was that was calling a little something. And most of us, like, it's something about that, and it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa! I want to hear more about that. I want to hear more of that. And the little dancing, they kind of had me going with that for a second. Um, but that just lets you know just how powerful music, dance, the arts are. That's what's honestly separates us from some of the other species on the planet. Although we know that there are some who are understanding the art. When you think of peacocks, and if they know they are walking art, and they get glamour, they get that. Birds, I should say. Um, but we have the tools to go beyond just our outside. We can create things that is not necessarily on us, like a movie perhaps, or music and things like that, and just things with our voice and how we can change it and alter. It's just amazing when you really think about art and music. um Money. One of the things that I found very interesting, when you watch movies and there's currency exchange, or any type of movie, and when they talk about money, usually it's just, we hear dollars. We might hear, if it's like action movie and it's talk about ransom, they might say yen or something like that. But there's only you don't you see like a stack of money or something like that. But like when the characters are going into the store, you see a quick exchange. It's not too much. Here, we understood currency. One of the things that I don't think I was aware of until this movie, maybe I knew and I just didn't think about it, but I didn't understand that there's their own currency amongst the plantations. And that kind of blew my mind. It makes sense, right? Um, because they only have so much of the US dollar money at the time. Um, but there is a heavy influence on the money. Like you're seeing it, and even when Annie is being paid for services by the little girl, you can see or that money is exchanged, and it wasn't US money. So I do find that interesting that he Ryan Coogler took that approach, that he wanted to really make us known, and I think there's something there. And it's like, one, it's a bit of a history lesson because there is a lie that is consistently told that basically, we're just in that people, barely humans walking around, and we have to be led, like animals. And did you know about this money that was exchanged, a separate currency? Isn't that amazing? I didn't know that. I don't, and if I did, I don't remember. So that's why I'm saying it like that. Maybe I have been taught and I forgot, but I honestly don't remember that being taught. And that is very, I don't know, it tickled my brain hearing that, and that theme stayed with me because I know there's a bigger thing, and I don't think I've completely fleshed it out yet, on why that is, but there's something about that. It brought on a sense of pride in me. I think I hate the reasons on why that is they had to do it, but just the resilience, and I maybe that's what I'm seeing. Maybe that's what I'm feeling, knowing just how resilient, um, these people had to be. My people, these people had to be. Stands out to me, but I think it's worth thinking about that aspect of the money. Don't lose that. There's something there. He shows money, like he shows you the money being exchanged. Now we're gonna talk about magic, the hoodoo. Well, we're going to talk about Annie. Annie is clearly working hoodoo. So we find out who Annie is. She's introduced because we see Smoke coming to visit. This is the day they're trying to get stuff together. He stops by, um, and he there's a scene that's kind of poignant for a moment where he's kind of just standing and like in the middle of like a treed area, and there's something that takes place there too, but eventually cuts to him seeing a grave, a little tiny, and you see a little handprint. So, it's a baby and it's tended. They tend to it because there's stuff out there. And then we go in and we meet Annie. Annie's finishing up with this little girl who's buying something from her, and there's this exchange happening. And then she goes, and Smoke and Annie have their exchange, and she takes his, he's saying, uh, Smoke is saying, excuse me, that he's traveled around the world, and there's one thing he knows that's powerful is money. And he doesn't know about all this other stuff, this magic stuff. This is not where power is. And we learn that he's wearing a mojo bag and he still have it on. And he's like, well, why this didn't save, the other person they were with or this other person? And he's like, she said, I don't know. Full stop. I want to talk about that right there. I don't know. This would not be the first time Annie kind of looks and is just like apologetic or I'm sorry. She ends up saying that once Smoke is killed and turned into a vampire. She says, I'm sorry. This is something I love that I haven't heard talked about. The willingness to say, I don't have all the answers. I know how to work my mojo and I can extend it to you, but I don't have all the answers. I have a lot of occult knowledge. I have a lot of information, but I don't know everything. There's practitioners who are on these apps, they pretending and acting like they know everything. They know the answers to everything, and they, and we know why. It's a sales pitch, is marketing, because they're usually selling something or they're trying to, lure you into buying something or service or anything like that. And no one knows everything. We work divination, yes, which Annie did in the movie, but you can be working divination, but we're supposed to be having the human experience so you can understand the energies around it. Sometimes it's direct, but I honestly believe that we are not meant to know step by step by step by step everything that's supposed to happen. And also because one thing could thwart it. This is the possible outcome. If you are somebody like myself who believes that you create on some level your reality, I'm not saying you create the reality. I'm saying you create your reality, meaning you create the prescription for your lens on life. Um, as a glasses word, this is why I'm thinking this. You're making that. If you want to have an existence where things are very narrow, you can only just see barely what's in front of you. Now, life around you is occurring, and that's going to get in your your psychology on how you view the world. But if you're letting the third eye, you're letting, self, a higher self come into play, then you won't let that just be your driver for your circumstances and your lens, the way you look out into the world, your worldview. This takes work. This is a big part of me, of my modern hoodoo that I practice. Uh, it takes a lot of work to do this, to not constantly be shaped and molded by circumstances that are outside of my power. I dictate my view going forward, which is my reality. Um, and I believe that Annie was adept at doing that as well, was knowledgeable in doing that as well. She knew what she knew, and she was open to learn. She took that mojo bag, which he was, protesting about, only power was money. And she's like, but it saved you. Because that was the purpose of the mojo bag. And by the way, he was wearing it when he came to see her. You could tell he always had it on. She took it and, she did some rework on it, and he took it back with him. This would be important because we would see once the juke joint is up and running. And the vampires and everything's on an attack, like I told you before, everybody else was getting caught up, including his brother, but not him. This was pivotal because there's that scene again when they are fighting, and Smoke is clearly trying to turn him. I mean, Stack is trying to turn Smoke, that um, he can't. He's trying to bite him and he can't, and that's the magic working. There's also a scene of Annie doing some divination with charms and bones and things like that, and that because and at that point she understood. Yeah, she did understand. But here's the thing: from the beginning, did she know exactly what would happen? No, but at that point, her working that, she knew what the next steps. She knew what she needed to know, because the inevitable was she was going to die that night. Her biggest thing was, I got somebody waiting for me. Their baby, because it was their baby, we would find out. Smoke and Annie had a child, an infant that died. She said, I got somebody waiting for me on the other side. She knew that. She knew if she was a vampire, her soul would be trapped and she wouldn't get to see her baby. So a promise was made, and Smoke honored that, took her, and killed her before, she was converted into a vampire, which to me was an ultimate act of love, which I'm also considering magic as well. Because in order to stake somebody, to take, to end somebody, um, you have to get over your desire to want to see this person animated. Now they'll never be the same person, and you also know this person just told you they don't want that. Please, let my soul be free. Kill me. Don't. I'm already dead. Just let me pass on. And for him to have to dig deep and honor her wishes was love, and that is magic. I always talk about love and magic, and how the power of love will have you do things that you probably never thought you could do. He didn't want to kill her. He loved her. Um, Now I want to talk about trauma. And this all kind of coincides. So the KKK, the racism, the one scene that kind of stayed out to me about trauma, there's a gnat. Why wouldn't there be? What, are they following me? Anyway, is when Slim, there's a character Slim, he plays the harmonica. Slim is they're, again, it's during the day, they're trying to get stuff together. Slim's in the car, and they're driving through that one road where there's nothing but cotton fields. and he's taught, and they, you know, are driving and they see a chain gang, basically, men who were in prison, who are jailed. They're all black, and they're doing something to the road, digging up. And he yells out something to him, and they're like, "Oh, you know him?" He was like, "Yeah, I know all of them." And he's recalling a story, which, it's a deep story. It has to do with, crooked cops, racist crooked cops, and putting a man in prison wrongfully, and, taking his money, assuming he stole something, and he didn't. And there's a deeper story, but you see the movie, you'll get into it. Um, and when I'm listening to it, and I'm sad hearing it, just listening to this character tell this story, because these things happen. And you're right there. He's getting overtaken with emotion, and he just starts humming, and he's just start humming through the pain, humming a tune. And Sammy's in the back seat just looking, and man, that was deep. That stood out to me. You want to talk about the power of music, as healing. You got to let it out. He let it out that way, humming. And it makes me think of, when I thought of that, it made me think of my own ways of dealing with thoughts and things like that. I want, what, when I get too overrun with my own mind spinning, and if I'm fearful of something or I have anxiety, I play music and I sing. Because if I'm singing to the music, I can't be anxious. If I'm singing along and I'm, at the top of my lungs, and I'm just letting it out, or I'm humming, I can't be in that space. Is this just me? I noticed that, like, I can't be upset, but so long if I'm singing along, it's releasing at the same time. Music is powerful. I'll just say that for the 50 millionth time. Music is powerful, and there's his own magic in that. But working through trauma with singing it out, that's when you hear certain artists, and they talk about, like, after a bad breakup and things like that, and they come out with, like, Mary J. Blige, prime example, killer album back in the day, from these not great situations, and she turned that trauma into this music, and hence the blues, duh. Hence the blues. Um, yeah, and him just doing that humming of that song, it just about tore me up in there. Just humming through the pain, or humming the pain out, releasing it that way. Um, and then I want to talk about death and about the souls. I alluded to becoming a vampire, essentially means that you're not going to have your soul pass on anymore. And the need to pass, because then you can join, you know, the other side, which is not something to fear. And being a vampire, being a trapped soul. Now, here's where we're going to get a little more esoteric, and we're going to take off on there. So this concept of the trapped soul. So there is a what happens is, once the vampire turns you, once you're changed, or any of the vampires that Remy turned, this is what we know in the lore that we're seeing. They basically become like a cult, and there's shared memories, right? He knows, they all know now about each other's past and memories. That shares, like a hive mind type thing, that's taking place. And um because they are trapped, Remy can't experience things the way a soul would, the us regular human people can. So he was attracted to the music that Sammy was playing at the juke joint, his soulful voice and his guitar playing, and just the music. There's a scene where you could feel like an ascension taking place with the sound, and I felt it in the theater. And you see basically the roof burning and the place is burning down, and this is what Remy is seeing. This is what he can see. It's making memory. He's seeing the past, his ancestors. It all comes to him when he hears this, and he wants that, because if you're in a hive mind, he can access that. Um, some people are alluding to the culture vulture vibes, basically kind of absorbing everything without giving anything and without any respect. Like, you don't have respect for my life, but you want to take it because you want to use it to connect to something. It makes you feel something, but you don't want to honor me and just let hear me play. And no, you want to absorb me. You want to take me on, all of me, consume all of me, so you can access this anytime you want. Now, to take that a step further, if you do that, guess what? It dilutes what was. It's not the same thing anymore. So that's why when you see um, other cultures try to basically take on, I wouldn't say take on, but emulate exactly as Black people do, specifically Black Americans. One, it never looks right. Dancing, even, I mean, they can, some people really have it down, but it's always something different. It's a different flow that just can't be duplicated. They come close. There's some people who come very close and they spend a lot of time trying to do it, but it's not the same. There's a reason for that. It really is magic at play, and it's in the melanin. People don't want to say it is true. I'll say it. But this light that Sammy had, um, this music, this sound, this gift that he had to transcend space and time. Remember, with the voice, he can call. He was that mean Remy was able to get access to his ancestors, and that's what he wanted. He wanted to be able, because he had been. We don't know how long he's been walking the earth, but we know it's been some time, which ties into still in the death realm. So there's a baptism that takes place in this movie. So it's kind of the last showdown between Sammy and Remy, the vampire. And they're in the water. Sammy he has never let this guitar go this entire movie. The guitar has been in his hand the whole time. Um, and there's something to be said about that and symbolism about that, but I'll get there. Remy, so Sammy starts reciting the Lord's Prayer. Not only does the vampire do it, all the vamp, because at this point, everybody that was at the juke joint, they left. He converted them to vampires. So the whole crew, everybody's out there reciting it in unison. And the takeaway to me is obvious. I'm not gonna say it's my opinion. I think it's very obvious, although I'm finding people with a Christian bent want to see it very differently. The Lord's he said something that's really important, and it's not for interpretation because it just is. Um, the vampire Remy says, "Oh, when they came to my people, and they forced, basically he's saying they forced Christianity on my people, and they taught us these prayers, just like like your people." He said, I don't find he didn't basically he was saying, he knows they don't work, but he still finds comfort in knowing them and reciting them. Um, in the same way I know witches who like to listen to gospel music, even though they're not at all Christian or anything like that. Something about the words. They like the words. They like the way the music goes, and it's something soothing to them. In the same way people like church bells, but they have no intention on, partaking in any of the rituals of the church. I think there are people who like the idea and the mass and the symbolism of certain rituals in Catholicism, but they're not Catholic. There are some people who just admire these ways and are looking at it from they're just taking their thing that they like about it and they're enjoying it. I don't see that as a bad thing, by the way. I don't think that's a culture vulture. I think that's somebody who's just in admiration of this one thing. Um, that that's it. But in this scene, it's powerful, and they're standing in the water, and in the end, the very tool that the Sammy's pastor father thought was, something very negative, was him playing that damn guitar and being sinful out there in the house of sin, the juke joint, was the thing that saved Sammy. That guitar saved him. He was able to use that as a weapon. I told you I get calls. Sorry about that. Anyway, he was able to use that as a weapon. So that was telling, and that said a lot. Um, though Sammy, still in a death theme, survives this night. He survives the night. He goes because he had made a promise in the beginning of the movie that he would be there Sunday morning. This is taking place on a Saturday. He said he will be there Sunday morning to deliver, his sermon that his dad wanted him to do. He said, I'll be there. He was there. He showed up, bloodied, bruised, battered, limping in with a messed up guitar, but still in his hand. Um, to me, he went through trials and tribulations to get there, but he was seeking his father. He was seeking, like, where else was he going to go? That's where he knew his father was, and he's beat down bad. It's been trauma. Like, all these people died. So much has happened. The woman, he had the best night of his life, and the worst night, though. That he I'm going to get to the sex aspect of this movie, but he had a situation take place, and a lot of revelations happened that night. Just for him to bust through the church doors and his father to use him as a testimony. And part of that testimony was saying, put drop, basically drop this guitar and, pick up the Lord. Stay in that. And you see, it looks like there's battle with Sammy in that moment. Spoiler, he don't drop the guitar. And we know that Sammy got to live a long life as a blues player. There, he's, at least we see him again in his 70s, so he's been living and he's been doing well. So he made the right decision holding on, and he had a gift. Why the hell should he leave it? And the thing to me to take away from that, both of those scenes with the vampire, Remy, who is basically saying, assimilate, become a vampire. There's so much more here. It's beautiful. It sounds very like I don't know, like, how these Mormons come around, knock on your door and talk. It was given that energy. Specifically white Mormons. I don't know if y'all know what I'm talking about, but they come knocking on your door and they want to spread the word and tell you stuff, and it's like, and they're a little too happy, and something about that is just, it is not disarming, it's alerting for me. I don't, it I immediately think evil. I don't know about y'all, that's where my brain goes. I think you're evil. And I know how y'all really feel about me, and I don't want to convert to that, because I feel like the whole thing's a setup. Them knocking on your door, I feel like they're robbing your energy. I'm very weird. I'm not the household to knock. I'm not going to go back and forth with you. We not talking. Get away from my door. I consider that them, when I'm doing warding spells and all that sort of stuff, they're the thing I'm warding away as well. But I feel what I got from that was that Sammy twice was, to me, two different death cults were wanting him to submit to them. Both, he loses his power. The vampire, the pastor father, they're both death cults. And they both, they're both thrive in everything's about death. Everything you have to die for it to get good in both things. So they're death cults to me. Yeah, and that was something I had to sit and think about as well. I was like, damn, that was deep. Thinking about that, I was like, yeah, he was almost, he had to make a decision either way, and I'm glad he chose his power. Both ways, because he was going to give himself up to that vampire at one point in the movie because he thought it would save everybody else. Hatred. The next theme, hatred. So all this takes place. Smoke is the last twin standing, last man standing, except for Sammy, obviously. And he would learn through the vampire Remy that, he's going to none of this, like, you were going to die no matter what, you was going to die. You either going to die with me and you get to live forever, essentially. Um, and all this, sugary, saccharine sweet love that he was talking about being a vampire, joining his death cult, or you was just going to die anyway because the clan was coming to get you the next morning. You was never like none of this was ever going to be. So when we go back to the theme of freedom, there was the illusion, there was never any freedom. And Smoke, after this hellish night of him, losing the woman he loved, losing his brother, he's got to fight the dang on clan. And because he's still wearing that mojo bag, he was able to kill all of them because they did, in fact, come the next morning. Um, Nigger hunting, as they were saying. They were coming for him. They was coming to take them all out and keep the money that they just paid for this place, which they would learn was a slaughterhouse. Um, and he takes them all out. That was so that felt right in the theater. That just felt good. Justice. I'm not a Christian, y'all. I don't have this thing where turn the other cheek or God's gonna get him and all that sort of stuff. Nah, he needed to take all them out, and I was happy to see him do it. He took that bag off, the mojo bag off at one point because he knew that was protecting them, and he wanted to go be with his woman and his baby, and he got to do that. And in the very end, I love the scene where he's looking over and he sees Annie and she's nursing her baby, and she tells him, come on, but you can't bring no smoke over here. Now that was a double meaning. The cigarette smoke, because he was trying to, light smoke a cigarette he got from the man at the sheriff, the man that, or the head of the KKK that sold him and his brother the building for the juke joint, who was double crossing him the whole time. He said there is no clan earlier. When he said that, I already knew there is a clan, because why would you be willingly saying that? I know, sir, you are the clan. We know this. Well, if you're black, you know this. Um, he looks over and she says it because Smoke, like, basically is just you. Um, you can't bring all that other stuff over here. Um, you got to be you, coming over here. And because Smoke and Stack, Smoke was Elijah, and Stack was Elias. That was their actual name. So you gotta come over. I guess you coming over here as Elijah. You ain't coming over here as Smoke. And he did. And he went to go be with his woman and his baby, and he had people waiting for him, and he was able to go. He took that bag off so he could become vulnerable, and he got, he was shot, and he died, and he killed all the Klansmen first, and then he was able to die and be with his people, his loved ones on the other side. But that hate, the man couldn't even process what happened. He had to go fight Klansmen when the sun came up that morning. The sinner, the theme of being a sinner. Everybody was a sinner in their own way, right? That was the takeaway. So this is where we get into the other casting characters when I say their own way. So Sammy has a wonderful night. So as they're prepping, and he's talking to one of the twins, and he's explaining to him basically, he's going the details about how to lick he said, how you get an ice cream and you lick it, and he's talking about doing a sexual act. And he's given Sammy the information to perform said sexual act. So he has his moment because he sees this young woman, and she tells him, they had met earlier during the day, and he sees her at the juke joint. And he's like, his moment comes, and he tells her, he wants to taste her. And she basically says, hey, look, I walked here, we got a little twang situation. I didn't walk here. I'm sweaty, and he ain't mine. He ain't mine. And I was like, y'all need that needs to be a take. He did not mind. That wasn't what he was trying to get into. Look, he ain't got nothing to compare it to. He just trying to make some stuff happen that night. It was a good night. He wanted to make it a better night. And he did. And he did. She said she was married. So there you go. You want to talk sinning in their own way. She said she was a married woman, but she let some stuff go down. um, the scene between Annie and Smoke, where he by the way, that was Pearline. He ends up naming his bar years later. We find him in the 90s. Sammy, that is, after everything. He named his place called Pearline's. He never forgot. Of course, she died with everybody else. Annie and Smoke, people have been talking about the scene where, she touches him, full on crotch and says, see your body didn't forget me. And then they get into some sexual activity, you know. It's amazing the number of people who said they didn't think that's what was going to happen because she's a darker woman who has, with body, and there's assumption, she would have a different role. No, I don't know. No, no. It's given thick, it's given delicious. That's why she was cast in that role. It's not given anything else. That's all I saw personally. But I feel like people, want to see what they want to see. Hey, Dylan. Um, there's so many different characters. Slim, Delta Slim, the character who hummed through the pain that I talked about. He drank. He drank a lot. There's a good reason this man drank a lot. He been through a lot, but still going through a lot. And yeah, he drank a lot, and some people consider that sinful. You should see it. There's so many different characters. We have Mary, the one with the 1/8 black in her. She's, she shouldn't even be there. She's putting the whole crew in danger. And Stack consistently told her, like, what the deal is if she wanted to stay anyway. But she was a married woman as well. Another, sinner. So everybody had their sins, basically. I love that spin on that that it's called sinners. So those were kind of my major themes. My standouts were against Delta Slim telling the story and humming through it. That stood out to me. Turning Black folks into vampires, they gain immortality at the cost of their souls. So this goes back into the freedom theme that I talked about. That really got me when you really think about it. These moments of freedom, but at what cost? That's all I kept thinking. But at what cost? It costs your soul. But if you go with the other death cult, with the church, with Christianity, they're technically telling you it costs your soul. Either way, you got to die to experience the powers, the gifts, the freedom. You only get that in death. Either way, definitely something that stood out to me. The mid credit and end credits. It made me think of Marvel. If because Black Panther, Ryan Coogler did that one. Black Panther. So Marvel is good for like the mid credit and end credit. Like you got to stay to the screen goes black, and if you don't, you miss a lot. So because that's how we are as when I go to the movies, and that's how it was with my kids and my family. I don't leave until the credits are done because I think almost every movie's gonna do that, and I'm glad that I knew to do it. Because and I won't give those away because they tie things up in a nice little bow. The vampire remic. Um, that artificial love. These is a standout to me. It does makes me think of evangelical Christians, or Mormons, or those like cult like Christian groups that are predominantly white. That's what I see when I see Black people also doing that. I think the same thing. I think of them as the vampires, the Black vampires. It's a hive mind thing. and they just profess that they're just about love, and they're some of the most hateful people and murderous freaking people that you'll know. I just want to let you know that my dad last one, oh my God, in the early morning. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that for you, Dylan. I am so sorry. My condolences. Oh my goodness. Ooh, that's got to be heavy. Dealing with everything. I definitely. You have my condolences. I am so sorry. Um, but I am going to get back to this. Not to minimize your pain or anything like that, but we got to get back to this. Um, the concept of them being about love and healing, because he was kind of Remy was talking about that stood out to me. I could not help but draw parallels um to religious groups. I won't even just say Christianity, but that's what we were talking about, but all of them as well. Um being Muslim or Jewish, all of that. Okay, I see you. Yeah. I'm glad you have others as well. Uh, but just seeing, to me, they're all death cults. I don't see why more people don't see it that way. You have to basically give up your soul and be willing to die. Like that's where you experience the trueness of being Christian. Like that's your reward, death. I don't know. Anyway, it made me really death was heavy. Obviously, death was a lot in the movie, but death was heavy on my mind watching this. And again, the standouts about just again freedom with Smokestack, Sammy, having just those few hours of freedom and how effed up it is that that's it. That was the most freedom that they got to experience in that moment of just being amongst their own and having a good time and just for those brief moments. I hate that that's how it was, but there's something there that I find beautiful as well. Um, I took notes as soon as I got home, so I have a lot of different notes here. But like I said, I wanted to kind of touch on a lot of the different themes that was going on. Hoodoo was a big player in this movie. Um, if you take nothing away, just understand that the power was in the hoodoo. It was in the occult knowledge coming from Annie. It was not in the Lord's Prayer. It wasn't in having faith in God and having faith in anything. It wasn't about a God given talent. This extended beyond the scope of Christianity. It extended to a time when that wasn't even existing yet. The Christian cult didn't exist yet. This is something ancestral, primal, that predates everything that we knew in the movie, right? It's something bigger than what we know, essentially, and the way it ties in other cultures and what it can do for other people, just the gift of sound, of music, of singing. Um, Yeah, that was something that definitely, that is my biggest takeaway. When the person I was with, they said when we walked out the theater, they said, "I feel like I'm a different person than when I walked in. I feel forever changed by this." And I definitely understand that as well. The desire and the need to work my own magic intuitively, um, has never been stronger, and to continue to work with my ancestors and to broaden that even more so is stronger in me leaving that movie, listening to music, understanding the breath. For some people, they said they went and they actually started listening to a lot of blues music afterwards, because there was this, you want to feel, you want to keep that connection going. um, for some of us is to understand history a little bit more, to understand all the other backdrops. For some of us is to want to, we desperately want to know the backstory on Smoke and Stack and their life in Chicago and Boston and then the war. And some of us want to know more about Remy the vampire and understanding how did he get here. And the Sammy, the rest of his life, what happened. You had this crazy thing happen. A lot of us we just want more. We don't want it to end because it was so profound. This is one of those movies where there's no note was something I think should have went this way or should have went that way. This was a masterpiece. The filming was a masterpiece. The sound was a masterpiece. The acting. I started this off letting you know that I genuinely, like, in my head, I was like, well, which one do I like? Do I like Smoke or do I like Stack? It's the same man playing the characters. He did it so well. I'm over here like, well, which one I like? Because it's like the a masterclass in acting. Watching that, just the way he was able to show, like, first of all, they're twins, so there's similarities, but they're different. And he kept it so that you felt like these are two people you're talking to. And the way it was filmed was genius because you felt like two different people were talking. Um, they were fighting, y'all. They rolling on the ground, and it felt like this was like you feeling the feels. Um, yeah, yeah. So the term they use of West African term would be a griot. That's what. Pause. So you heard that, right? Nothing looks disturbed. So I have the windows open, so maybe it's something out one of my neighbors or something. It sounded like it was inside and something fell. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what it was. um, yeah, here we are. And I'm like, I got things because I'm doing breaking down my other rooms. So I kind of got things haphazardly propped up while I'm doing that until I get everything straight. So I don't know. But anyway, boy, a griot is what they said. Um, he had the gift to connect to spirits, past, present, and future. We're talking about Sammy. Um, I do love that we got to see because they all wanted to save Sammy. So in movies, if you think about like in a horror movie, there's always one character that's supposed to be the last man standing, so to speak. There's the one that you're saving. Even if it's a group of people, there's always the one person that you're trying to save. First of all, I'm so grateful and happy. It was mostly black cast, so it didn't make any sense for anything else to happen. But the old movie trope where the black person gets killed immediately, or the black, that's just not gonna happen because Sammy was the black character, the young black man who they wanted to keep safe. That you could see in the movie, they were trying to keep him safe. All the other characters, for the most part, wanted to keep him safe. So he got to go on. And of course, even in the end, Smoke making that agreement with his twin, who at this point is a vampire, to not kill, don't kill him, let him live. I thought that was really profound. Very Elwoods, yes. Thanks. A little bit of what I was going for, so thank you. Yeah, yeah. I hadn't talked about the Chinese in the movie and how that was something a lot of people, that was new information for a good amount of people based on the things I'm seeing in comments on other people's breakdown, where they didn't realize in the Mississippi Delta that there were Chinese people, families. And it was interesting how that was shown. So you'll see, and they make a point. Again, this is excellent filming. A story is being told just by filming. Um, so you see where the one character, she walks between Chinese woman. I did not write that woman's name down. I forgot. Forgive me. She walks from one end of the one from her store across the street to another store, and I was like, oh, they're both her stores. So one is the whites only, one is the blacks only. That's why that is separate, never equal. Was full. In fact, this is 1932. My grandmother was born in 1934, for reference. She is very much still alive. She is 90 years old. She will turn 91 um, if hopefully so, November of this year, but she is 90 years old. Her oldest sister is still alive too, and she's 90, like 97, I think, 96, 97. Um, I come from some genes with some long lives, y'all. But anyway, yeah, when I think about that, this is taking place in 1932. So this would have been in my grandmother's mother's time as she's living her life. And they came from Georgia. My grandmother is from Florida. That's where she remembers, but her mom and dad are from Georgia. Um, and they would have been affiliated with the plantations there in Georgia. I know that for sure. Um, when I just think about the time frame that this is taking place in, all that comes to me and that connection is just like, if you ever want to know, like, well, like I sometimes like, how do you not just want to die? Like, just I'm tired of living like this, of just how. And I realize as the trauma I'm living through today, that we're all living through today, and it is trauma. Every day is trauma. If y'all don't know what I'm talking about, I'll just tell you this. If you're somebody who had to borrow student loans and your loans went into default, an executive order has been put out where starting May 5th, they're going to start collecting and they can garnish your wages. That affects almost everybody I know, because most of the people I know, we all went to college. Majority of the people, Black folk I know, we went to college, and I'm talking about family friends. We went to college and we have student loans, me included. um, yeah, that's not something you want to hear about that. Now, all of us are not in default, but a lot of us are trying to keep it so that we don't go into default. But some people I know, they're behind. As for me and many other, we've been in forbearance indefinite. We just we're in this perpetual forbearance cycle. Uh, and we ride that wave because it's just been impossible to try to pay that back in life, especially with things being the way that they are. It's, the economy being what it is. But moving on. So trying to survive these times, because I truly feel like once this happens, debtor prison is going to come back. Boom, that's how you get the new slaves. They've already been doing it, but you need more. So have more babies, not be able to afford it, imprison more people, free labor. I don't think this is a foolproof plan though, because you need consumers. And if you make it so, like, there just won't be enough consumers. But I feel like the country's being ran by a bunch of idiots. So they don't think like that. They just think power, money, power, money, power, money. There's a psychological issue that happens when you hoard so much, and hoarding wealth um, is a thing. Being a billionaire is a hoarder on another level, but it does something to your psyche. A good case study. Well, there's a lot of people, but I'm going to give you somebody Black. Oprah Winfrey is a great example. Um, by extension, Gayle King will be a great example. And isn't that kind of like a hive mind type thing with billionaires? They become very focused on just making more and having more. There's not they hoard properties, they hoard money, stocks, corporations, businesses. They want to consume everything. It's insatiable, kind of like a vampire. They just want to consume, they want to just take in everything. Um, Yeah, like vampires. And what we know from being fans of any vampire movie, they can't be left to do this, because if they keep consuming, there won't be anything left. But the vampires don't seem to understand that, because they're controlled by the bloodlust and they're controlled by greed, billionaires. You would think, well, and a lot of us who are not billionaires or multimillionaires, we think, well, if I had that, I would do this. I would help so many people. I would do all this good. Um, I don't need, I would just be happy with this. But I don't think people realize that there's something that happens, there's something that switches off in your brain, and we can make it more spiritual and say there's something else happens within the spirit where the lack of empathy comes into play, and you just want more. You just want more. You might have thought you were going to do it that way, um, but most people don't. We don't have a lot of examples of, to be honest, of that really happening. Somebody finally gets money. We could look at lottery winners and how they end up, and people say no, it's just the people around them, they were jealous. I mean, that's another aspect, I agree, but no, something else happens. A lot of them want more. You'll see them gamble their money away. A lot of them keep playing a lottery in a way. And it's like, well, if you won hundreds of millions of dollars and you walked away with hundreds of millions of dollars, you're still playing, you're still gambling some of that away. Oprah and The Rock asking us to please donate. Yeah, I'm glad that people got upset about it. Yeah, and that has just kind of, and it just lets you know there's a disconnect. Gail King saying, looking into the camera, saying, have you been to space? Have you been space? No, girl, no, because we can't. We'll never go out into outer space, even if it becomes accessible to the masses. Is only to the very wealthy that get to do that, not us regular folk. And if it became something that was available to us, that means the planet's already destroyed anyway, and they're sending us as tribute. It's not because, just know if that happens, it's not because somebody's trying to make it for all of us to have access to. It's because we're being sent. It's the Hunger Games becomes very real in that moment. They're testing some things out to see how far each like trip they're taking a little bit further to see how far it could go before it explodes or before we all die on it. Before they could try, they want to test their theories about going to another planet. That would be the only reason they let us commoners get on as test dummies, essentially. Don't fall for it. If you start seeing that over the years, no. Who am I saying? Who knows what's going to happen over the years? I don't. I'm starting to think there won't even be an America, United States as we know it. But who am I? Just some crazy witchy lady. But yeah, those were my notes. That the themes I wanted to talk about, the major themes. But I started. Yeah, I was ending with the Chinese characters. I was like, wait, I felt like I was making another point. It was very interesting to see that, and again, to get that information. I personally never thought about Chinese folks being in Mississippi in 1932. I didn't know that, to be honest with you. That was new information to me. And then come to find out that there's actually historical fact to back that up. It wasn't just a plot line in a movie. Now, with that, I do just want to say there's a scene with the wife of the store owner, where she lets in the vampires because she wanted to fight it out, and a lot of people was like really upset about her doing that. um it's two different ways you could look at it. Like, it was inevitable. I think they were trying to wait them out until the sun came up, but it was inevitable. um Unfortunately, it was always going to be inevitable that these people were going to die, and Remy basically told them that y'all were going to die either way. um by me and my killer vampires, or by the clan in the morning. And when you realize that, that those bits of freedom become very, they stand out even more about these characters, and just having that little bit of freedom. And everything else was an illusion, but they were free in those, that was an illusion. They were free in those moments, and it's just deep when you think about it. So for me, practicing magic, practicing folk magic, practicing hoodoo, um, being a witch, and redefining what that means specifically as a Black woman, is freedom. It is living free. It's freedom for me. And I know why that's so important. Watching that movie kind of reminded me that's why that's so important. That is freedom for me. Everything else is the part where it takes away from my feeling free. Yeah. So we're all kind of, having these moments where, you realize how free are you really? We're forced to participate in this mess of a capitalistic society, right? These vampires, and do the bidding of these vampires. And if you dare not to be of hive mind, if you dare not to connect with them, um, you feel under threat. And that's my existence. It is, because I don't want to conform. Um, and by the way, conforming doesn't guarantee freedom, as kind of like this movie showed us. Not if it means my soul, not if it means, and to be Christian is to give up me. Like have to give up me. It's not increasing me. It's not broadening me. It's giving up me. And that was something I kind of looked at when in the end of the movie, or through the movie, it felt like, Sammy was being asked to give up his life, his soul. And he was what made him him? He's a blues player. He's a blues singer. That's who he is. Um, Being asked to give up the occult, to give up my knowledge. That's what I would equate that to. That's in my soul. That's who I am. To be anything else would be a sacrifice of self. I don't want to give up myself. I would choose, like Annie did, to go to let my soul just pass and be with people who love me on the other side. I would prefer that over anything else. It doesn't hurt that Michael B. Jordan is in it. Yeah, double points. He's in it twice. I fell in love with Smoke and Stack. I was like, I saw points on each end. Points on each end. But I'm going to go ahead and end it here. I'll probably talk more about it on Friday. But Friday, I'm going to have some books that we're going to talk about. But I'll probably talk more about that because I'm sure there's things I'm not thinking about. That I made, 3 pages of notes. 3 pages of notes here on this movie, just coming off and talking it out and doing a little bit of research, because I was like, well, what's going on? What was happening in 1932? Let me get into that. And then I knew Clarksdale, there was a reason for all of this, and I needed to understand that, why that was. Thank you. Same to you, Dylan. Yeah. So, like I said, I'll be back on Friday, but I appreciate you all. Let me know in the comments if you've seen the movie, what you thought about it. If you want to liken anything specifically to the Hoodoo connection or to the magic, let me know. And how you felt about it, let me know. Even if you don't agree, everybody doesn't have to see it my way. I especially want to know if you have a different kind of context to some of the things that you saw. I would be happy to see or read that. So like, subscribe, share, hit the join button to join Leap Taken membership. And before I go, since we are speaking Hoodoo, please understand I have created a Hoodoo Grimoire. This Hoodoo Grimoire will contain information up front to get you started on your practice, including a dedication. There is room for you to add more details, add your own spin. And the whole point of this, because this is a page that I put into mine, is for you to continue your journey in this book. This is in the back of the book. There are blank pages, beautiful blank pages, by the way, for you to continue the rest of your journey and add your own things. So that's what I did in mine. This is what I'm doing. This is my personal copy. So you can find links in the description if you are interested in having your own Hoodoo Grimoire. So this is what the books look like. Yeah, that's me. This is what the book looks like. It's available on Amazon. It's available on the TikTok shop and also through my website, leaptaken.com. Again, the links are in the description. All right. Thank y'all for watching. Bye.